unable to hear us, please do let us know in the chat window so that we can assist you. Okay, Ryan, I think we can get started. So let me switch the slides and the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It should be an interesting session. We are going to be talking about WVD and secure remote work. Obviously, I'm sure you're all aware the current situation, the pandemic has required most companies to dramatically change the way they're working. And so as a part of that, we got in touch with Roshan and Ingram Micro to put together this presentation just to help provide a bit more information for you all. Most of you are going to be well aware of who we are as ABTechnologies, but there are possibly some non-clients who are also have joined in, and so we thought we'd just start with a little bit of an introduction. So for those who are our clients, we are your managed service provider, and our mission statement there is to help our customers embrace digital transformation by enabling quality information technologies that are essential to business success. We've been around for a bit over a decade now, 38 employees, a lot of certifications within Microsoft, as well as then a lot of the other products we provide, StorageCraft, Barracuda, and a few others. And we are a gold certified Microsoft partner and work with Ingram Micro in that regards. So we can go to the next slide. As you mostly will be aware, we have a fairly large presence all across Australia. So in this map here, you can see it's a bit of a heat map of where our clients are. We've got quite a lot through New South Wales and Victoria, as well as Southeast Queensland and over in Perth. It also indicates where our offices are. So we're in North Queensland, Brisbane, Melbourne, New Zealand, and Perth as well. And so with all these locations and our clients spread out actually quite across the globe, we have clients over in Canada, South America, Malaysia, US. So it's, yeah, so that's the gist of us and what we are able to do and able to offer. And as once again you're probably aware, is that full managed service provider, as well as IT road mapping, planning, budgeting, assessments, audits, and we're moving more into cybersecurity as well, which is one of the key focuses for this particular presentation here with Roshan. So I think if we go to the next slide, so we've got our key presenter is Roshan. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, Roshan.
So, as Ryan said, my name is Roshan. I work with Ingram Micro Australia, based in Melbourne. We work very closely with ABTechnologies. They're one of our preferred solution providers, and we have been working with them for quite a number of years. About myself, I've been working on pretty much Microsoft technologies most of my career. Started with SharePoint, then moved to Office 365, which now is called Microsoft 365, and I've been doing Azure since 2012. I'm more focused on the pre-sales aspects, where I work with ABTechnologies to design solutions, architecture them, create proof of concept, and basically help customers move into Azure, or help them give them a roadmap of how they can move their applications to Azure. I've worked with Microsoft as a vendor. I've worked with partners like ABT, and currently I'm working with a value-added distributor such as Ingram Micro. So I'm thankful for the opportunity allowing me to present in today's session, and yeah, so I hope you learn and enjoy knowing about Windows Virtual Desktop and how it can benefit you.
And we also have Jared here with us. Some of our clients might be familiar with Jared. So he's our Senior Solutions Architect and is also spearpointing our development for cybersecurity and a managed security platform as well. So I don't know if you want to say hi, Jared, and do a quick introduction.
Sure. Hi guys. So yeah, as Ryan said, a lot of you have probably dealt with me in the past or met me at some point over my time at ABT. I've been at ABT for about coming up 8.5 years now, I think. So quite a while. My current position, I'm a senior solutions architect. I'm responsible for R&D, solution design, and security. So I'm not really in the trenches anymore these days, mainly behind the scenes at that high level solution design, and making sure that what we're offering you is going to meet your business needs and solve the problems that you guys have. So you can see there I've got quite a few Microsoft certifications under my belt. Specialize in 365, Azure, and security. So yeah, that's about it. I'll pass you back over to Roshan to get started. Unless Ryan, you had anything else?
Well, I was going to say, I think to start off with, we're going to do a quick poll, just to, I guess, get a bit of the temperature in the room. So you should be seeing that one pop up. So if you can please fill this this initial poll out. We'll be doing these throughout the presentation. The first one here we have is, if you could bring one thing from your home to the office, what would it be? So coffee machine, your cat or dog, comfy chair, bedrobe, or ping pong table. So you have a few seconds there to just fill that one out. If you are having any issues, again, there is the little chat window as well. Feel free to type anything in there, any questions as well, and we'll be able to answer those for you. Okay, comfy chair. Yep, that's definitely something I missed when I was working at home. It was very good. Okay, so we'll let Roshan take over, and we'll get this underway.
We do have a couple of more polls to run. So
sorry, of course, we had a few extra questions there with that. I apologize. So the next question, I have registered for this webinar to find out what virtual desktop is, to learn more about how I can improve our IT processes, to learn more about Microsoft products and services. Just curious, ABT doesn't showcase webinars very often, and my boss made me. So I think I'll be ticking that bottom one there. There we are. Well, it's probably a good thing, as it's in the title of the webinar, Windows Virtual Desktop. But obviously, this will just be also covering the improvement to IT processes and Microsoft products as well. So, sorry for those 4% who were just made to attend, though. And we'll have one more question coming up, which is, how many employees within your organization work remotely at current? So I'm sure this has changed dramatically over the last 6 months for a lot of you. There we go. Okay. So about 20% or more for half or more of the employees, with about 64%, so few of our employees. So, well, so we might find as well for that 64% that there is also a capability issue there, which is something that WVD and the products that Roshan and Jared are going to talk about will help solve. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ryan, for running us through the presentation. So before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, just wanted to set a high-level agenda of what you can expect from today's session. As we are all in this pandemic, we just wanted to know how businesses are faced with challenges, right? Especially making sure that the applications and data are available for people working from remote. So we'll quickly look at some of the challenges, then we'll get started into what is this Windows Virtual Desktop. There's been talks about it for the last 6 to 8 months from Microsoft. The service has been made available for the last 1 year. So we'll look at a very high level overview of what is Windows Virtual Desktop and how it can potentially help you enable a secure remote work for your end users. We'll also look at its value proposition with respect to the user experience, how secure it is, and also what are the cost savings that you will see when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. We'll also look at its overall performance and reliability, and what are its integration options, because most of the customers already have different applications which are already running within their ecosystem. So we'll see how Windows Virtual Desktop probably works with some of the other applications and how well it integrates. And at the end, I want to make sure I give you a proper demonstration. Primarily, the demonstration will focus on the end user experience. If I'm an end user who will use Windows Virtual Desktop, how will my experience be? How will I navigate? How will I use different applications? And that should give you a good understanding of the overall concept. After the session, if you do have any questions, you can get in touch with ABTechnologies. They're specialized in Windows Virtual Desktop. I'll also be sharing my contact details at the end. And during the session, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat. Gerard is monitoring the chat, and we will take the questions towards the end. We'll summarize all the questions and answer it. But yeah, feel free to get in touch with us during or after the session, and we'll be more than happy to work with you. So to get started, I'm sure everybody is aware of COVID-19. It's hit us without any warning, and companies are now forced to work in a very different environment where employees are not able to come to office for various reasons, but at the same time, companies do want them to still contribute towards growing the company, towards helping their end customers be able to work every day in, day out. So one of the biggest questions that partners face today is how can we implement a secure remote work quickly and efficiently with very less changes, and of course you do not want to invest a lot during this pandemic. So this is one of the major questions that we get from every customer that we're talking in the last 6 months. They want to quickly enable certain services and solutions to make sure that employees either working remotely or working from a hot desk in a secure place are able to still cater to their end customers' needs. And implementing these solutions also is not as easy as it seems. There are certain things to keep in mind. You need to make sure that you have secure connectivity. Today, users are spread across the city or across the country. You might have people sitting in Brisbane working with customers in Perth. You can have employees sitting in New Zealand and helping out customers in Australia. So you need to make sure that customers and the employees have access to the right data. And IT is still able to manage the data, or your service provider is still able to manage the data, the security, the permissions. Flexibility is also very, very important. Now you do not have all the people coming into a single building and working from that one single building. You have employees and customers working from dispersed locations. You need to make sure that employees are able to connect whenever they require, but at the same time connect securely. You would also look for a solution that is customizable to your own setup, right? We cannot go after a solution or an infrastructure which is one size fits all. The solution should cater to a company which is of 5 users, should be customizable to a company which is 35, 40 users as well. So these are some of the challenges that you will definitely face during these times, and there are several tools available in the market to help you with this. Some of the tools can only help you with, let's say, just the security or just the flexibility. But what we'll be talking today is a holistic solution which will not only help you scale your infrastructure or scale the applications whenever required. It also will make sure cost is in check and it is absolutely secure. So let's get started into Windows Virtual Desktop. This is the best virtual desktop and application delivery system that Microsoft has introduced. Windows Virtual Desktop or Virtual Desktop infrastructure has been in the market for over a couple of decades now. Microsoft introduced VDI or RDS remote desktop services in Windows Server 2003 or even before that. It's been implemented widely across the globe, especially if you are a customer who uses a client server based application. You'll definitely be one of them using remote desktop infrastructure. Now, what Microsoft has done is with its recent enhancements to Windows 10 and Microsoft 365, Microsoft has come out with a desktop as a service offering from Microsoft Azure. So Windows Virtual Desktop is nothing but a desktop as a service offering from Microsoft Azure, which is hosted, managed, and maintained by Microsoft. If you're a customer who's using Office 365 or Microsoft 365, which is a productivity suite hosted and managed by Microsoft, something similar to that is Windows Virtual Desktop. In Office 365 or M365, you get Exchange Online, you get SharePoint Online. In Windows Virtual Desktop, you can publish remotes or publish an entire desktop itself. So that is what Windows Virtual Desktop is all about. So in the next slide, you will see different layers, and this is the slide that we will drill down in today's session. We'll look at how good or what is the end user experience when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. Most of you are again aware of how remote desktop works. You have a big fat server and you have multiple users logging onto it. You have application running on it and users are able to connect and manage. But how will this work in a cloud environment, right? Where the entire infrastructure is running on cloud and you are worried about how will a user connect to it, how will those applications work with your in-house applications like printers and scanners, for example, and how secure is it? Because now you are looking at a solution which is hosted by Microsoft, you have your applications running and your users are using a connection that is going out of your corporate network into Microsoft network and accessing applications. So how secure it is. We'll also look at a little bit of management aspect. Most of the management is pretty simple and straightforward, and with a company like ABTechnologies, they will be able to take care of your end-to-end implementation and management of Windows Virtual Desktop. But just giving you an overall idea of what are the management options available with Windows Virtual Desktop. I'm sure you all know about Microsoft Azure already. Since it's since Windows Virtual Desktop is a service running on Azure, you get all the benefits. You get the SLA benefit, you get the scalability, reliability benefit, and you get the standardization which Microsoft follows in terms of certifications, in terms of having that trust factor within their applications and infrastructure. Cost is something that we'll be going into a deep dive. We look at how it actually compares with an on-prem infrastructure or even RDS running on Azure, right? So RDS running on Azure, comparing that with Windows Virtual Desktop is also something that we'll be covering today. And you'll get a very good understanding of how the licensing works, how the scalability works, and how flexible is Windows Virtual Desktop when you compare that with a remote desktop infrastructure. And at the end, as I said, I'll also talk about how you can integrate Windows Virtual Desktop or Microsoft service with some other third-party services that are available in the market, right? Again, just want to reiterate that if you do have any questions during the session, please do use the chat window. We'll be more than happy to answer them as we go along. So starting off with end user experience. Now, Windows Virtual Desktop, as I said, is a service that is running in Microsoft Data Center or in Microsoft Azure. So your users will be able to connect to either an application which is published or an entire desktop using a special client, which is available on all the platforms. As you can see the icons, it's available on PC, on Android. You can even use a HTML5 browser. So your latest Chrome, Edge, Mozilla, Safari, and these browsers can be running even on a tablet for that matter, right? So you can use any HTML5 browser to access Windows Virtual Desktop. It also has native clients for iOS, Android, so you can use your Android tablet or iPad to access it. The client for Linux is under development. It should be made available very, very soon. So as you can see, you have pretty much the entire device ecosystem covered here. Right? Even if you have a thin client or a dummy machine which just has a browser, you can still use that to connect to a fully fledged Windows 10 desktop where you can have all your applications running. So that is how easy and flexible the platform of choice is with respect to Windows Virtual Desktop. The Windows differentiator is also very, very important. You typically, when you implement a remote desktop infrastructure, you would go ahead and have a Windows Server infrastructure. So far, if you have been using RDS, you would know that when you log in, you're logging onto a Windows Server operating system. And typically, Windows Server operating system has a lot of compatibility issues with a lot of applications, client-based applications. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you're actually logging into a Windows 10 platform. So it's the same platform that you have been using on your laptop or desktop for ages now, right? So it makes it much more easy, much more efficient, and there's a lot, and there is very less learning curve for your end users who already know how to use Windows 10. It supports all the latest security features. So if you have been using Windows 10, I hope that you're also using Windows Hello for authentication, the smiley icon that looks at your face and unlocks the PC. So that is supported with Windows Virtual Desktop. You can even allocate bandwidth depending on how the users interact with Windows Virtual Desktop, when they log in, when they log off, so that you can have much faster login times for the end customers. So all these various enhancements are available as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. With respect to user profiles, again, this is slightly technical. If you have again used Windows Remote Desktop, you would know that it has a lot of disadvantages in managing the user profile, right? The user profiles are not separate. They are all clubbed into a single drive or a single location. That makes it difficult to scale. But with Windows Virtual Desktop, now the user profile are containerized. They are stored separately, and whenever a user logs in, his user profile gets dynamically attached to the session host. And for an end customer, he doesn't even get to know that it is detached and attached. He just logs into the machine and he gets the same applications, the same features that he got when he logged in the previous time, right? It's very, very simple and straightforward. There's native integration with Microsoft 365 now. So if you're a customer who's using, let's say, M365, Business Premium, E3, E5, any of these plans, and if you have been using multi-factor authentication, conditional access, all of those get integrated now with Windows Virtual Desktop. And the last but not the least, Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams has probably been the biggest application that Microsoft has been, I would say, developing and selling in the last 6 months during the COVID pandemic. And a lot of customers wanted to make sure Windows Virtual Desktop works, or Teams works on Windows Virtual Desktop. Well, now that feature is available. You can actually have an audio video conferencing session or a call from between two people who are using Windows Virtual Desktop. So you can have employees using a desktop which is running in cloud, using Microsoft Teams, which is part of Office 365 and Microsoft 365, and these two will work together with a user who's remotely sitting in his home and having a conference call with people across the organization. So that is the kind of integration facility now available. This is a quick diagram that shows you that when you initiate an audio video call, the call does not traverse through the entire Microsoft Azure infrastructure. It goes between the two sessions, which means that the experience is very seamless, right? Your AV redirection is the module that Microsoft has implemented that makes sure that both your mic and your camera is now available for teams to use, and the call happens between peer-to-peer. So it's a P2P connection happening between two users or or a single and multiple users. So you don't need a very high bandwidth. You will still be using the Microsoft backbone network and get the peer-to-peer connection within Windows Virtual Desktop. During the demo, I'll also be showing a quick demonstration of how Teams works on Windows Virtual Desktop. So make sure we'll cover that. Quickly talking about security now. As I said earlier, Windows Virtual Desktop works on Azure. In Azure, the authentication provider is Azure Active Directory. So if you have been using Azure AD with your M365 for various security features like multi-factor conditional access, privileged identity management, if you have been using a self-service password reset, all those features can now get integrated with Windows Virtual Desktop, right? A Windows Virtual Desktop also makes sure that it eliminates a lot of ports and protocols which you need to open, right? Which reduces the surface area for attacks. During pandemic, the last thing that you want is a malware or a virus attack on your corporate data. So Windows Virtual Desktop definitely has these features and functionalities, and Microsoft has kept these ideas in mind when they were developing, and they have come out with a new technology called Reverse Connect, which eliminates the need of opening any inbound ports to your session host, which actually has your users. We'll also look at how you can provide granular access to your end users and how you can potentially isolate users, but still make sure that they're able to collaborate with each other. So quickly jumping on to some of the security aspects, and in each of these slides, you will see how it compares to an on-prem infrastructure, right? Now, let's say if you're a customer who's set up a remote desktop infrastructure on an on-prem server, how do you implement multi-factor authentication? How do you implement conditional access? How do you take care of its auditing and monitoring of it? These are too many add-on products that you need to put on top of your RDS infrastructure to implement these things. But with Windows Virtual Desktop, all of these things are just available. All you need to do is configure them. These services are already available, are already integrated. All you need to do is, if you have already enabled MFA, multi-factor authentication and conditional access, they just work with Windows Virtual Desktop. If you have not configured, all it takes is a couple of clicks and it gets configured with Windows Virtual Desktop. So, with security in mind, you will invest a lot more when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. You'll invest a lot more when it comes to on-prem virtualization rather than on Windows Virtual Desktop. And you will get the latest and greatest security features, which is now very, very important because now you have people working remotely. You want to make sure that they're able to access the data securely. The next big feature that you will see in Windows Virtual Desktop, again with respect to security, is Reverse Connect. So in your on-prem, again, if you compare it with an on-prem RDS, how do users connect? Let's say if you have remote users sitting in another branch office, you'll need to establish some kind of a site-to-site VPN. You'll need to open ports and protocols on its server. And these are loopholes that a hacker can use to access your servers, to access your applications. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you just don't open any inbound ports. So there is no way that a user who's outside your corporate network or is not a part of your company to even have the tools and technology to access any of your servers, because none of your servers, especially your Windows Virtual Desktop, have any inbound ports open. So there's less time and money invested in making sure you have any attacks being monitored. your IT team will be more focused on how can you scale your Windows Virtual Desktop, how can you add more applications and make it available to your end users rather than being worried about what kind of traffic is coming from the ports and protocols. Quickly talking about the user management. Now, typically what we have again seen is in an on-prem infrastructure, if you want to implement a single session, or if you want users to have their own dedicated space within the server, you typically allocate them a separate virtual machine itself. I'm assuming most of you are using either Hyper-V or VMware, and if you have Windows Virtual Desktop, if you have RDS configured on your Hyper-V or VMware, you typically allocate a separate virtual machine for each user. With Windows Virtual Desktop, Microsoft is actually using the Windows 10 multi-session feature. Windows 10 multi-session has been available for the last 3 to 4 years now, and this concept is what Microsoft brought into Windows Virtual Desktop. So in Windows Virtual Desktop, you buy one big fat server, and that big fat server can now run on Azure, which means you get the flexibility of starting and stopping it at any time, scalability. You can have multiple servers or even scale up the same server and have logically separated users on the same box, right? So as you can see in the diagram, multiple users are still logging on to the same box, but their data is logically separated. So a user 1 will not be able to see the data of user 2. So you get best of both worlds. You have one server and still be able to segregate the data within them. So these are some of the security and user experience features that you will gain if you go ahead and implement Windows Virtual Desktop for your organization. So we'll quickly jump on to another question here before we go on to the management piece of it. Tarika, can you go ahead and post the question?
Yep, it's on the screen.
Okay. Sorry, I apologize. My microphone was on mute. The first question we have here is, how do you measure success within your organization? The first option, we've got revenue, customer satisfaction, team KPIs, employee happiness, and all of the above. Okay. And with the results, all of the above is the overwhelming winner there. And we have a small group who said just employee happiness. Good for them.
So, I mean, this has probably been the same answer from a lot of customers, right? So they care about their employees. They also care about the business that they're driving. So they're always looking for solutions and technologies or services that will potentially not only help their internal employees get their day-to-day work done more efficiently, but also result in more services or more revenue, right? And that is where you need to have a solution. You need to have an infrastructure that not only changes dynamically depending on the situation, is able to customize itself, or you're able to customize it based on your needs. And that is where you will see Windows Virtual Desktop fitting in, right? So it works with your productivity suite. It works with your applications, whether it is client server based application, browser based application. It still works, and all of them is running on Windows 10. And Windows 10 is a platform that everybody is used to now, right? It's been in the market for probably, I would say, about 8-9 years now. So it's a platform that most of the customers are used to using. So it's one of those technologies that that helps customers solve multiple problems simultaneously. So quickly touching about user management, or I would not say user management, but the entire Windows Virtual Desktop management. So virtual machine management is reduced drastically because it is managed and maintained by Microsoft. So you are able to get all the SLAs that Microsoft promises, which is 99.99%. You not only get desktop publishing feature, but you can also do just app publishing. There are a lot of companies who come out with a requirement where they say that I do not have employees wanting to log on to a desktop. They're okay to use their own laptop to do it, but I want to make sure that they're able to access my ERP application only, right? Because that is what is the end customer requirement. That is now possible, right? You can have a mix of both. In the demo, you will see that I can publish both a desktop and app to a certain user. I can just publish apps or just desktop to some other users. Quickly looking at how easily it is to manage your infrastructure. Now, ABTechnologies definitely has their in-house RMM tool, which they will be using with Windows Virtual Desktop. It has all the monitoring capabilities, all the patching and update capabilities to make sure that you do not worry about how do I manage it, how do I update it, especially patching, and how do I configure it. So ABT is one of our preferred partners when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. They have been helping us implement it across Australia for a lot of customers, and they also have their own specialized tools which integrate with Windows Virtual Desktop, not only just with respect to management, even with respect to making sure you're able to quickly solve the issues if there are any. Now, the number of issues that you will face in Windows Virtual Desktop is already less. Why? Because you don't need to worry about ports and protocols. You don't need to worry about scalability. You don't need to worry about complex management or complex implementation. But even then, if there are any issues the end customer faces, let's say performance issues, or they want to implement certain security features, ABTechnologies already has the tools and technologies where they can quickly look at the issues, be more proactive, and are able to solve and take care of it. So that's a little bit about the management piece of Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, looking at a level higher than management is the entire built on Azure story, right? So it's working on Azure. Azure now has close to 55, 56 regions. They keep adding regions pretty much every quarter. So if you are a customer who are spread across the globe, let's say if you have an office in Australia, another office in London, another office in US, you can pretty much have your Windows Virtual Desktop up and running in all these 3 different regions in a matter of minutes, right? So that is how quickly you can set up the infrastructure. You can replicate, you can automate the same infrastructure in multiple locations using a single script. And you will also see if you look at the architecture of Windows Virtual Desktop, a lot of Windows Virtual Desktop roles are converted to platform as a service, which means you actually don't need to deploy a lot of roles. A quick example is if you have implemented or if you are running a remote desktop infrastructure in your on-prem servers, you would need to deploy terminal server, session host, gateway server, licensing server, all these various roles which basically are part of the full implementation. With Windows Virtual Desktop, you don't need to deploy any of these roles. All you need to worry is how many users will access it. Will I need a pooled desktop or a personal desktop? And what is my authentication? Right? These are the only 3 questions that a service provider will need from you, and he is able to implement the entire Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, quickly talking about cost saving, right? So in cost saving, what I've done is I've broken down into 3 sections. One is the infrastructure cost, the licensing cost, and finally the labor cost or the operations cost. So let's see how you can save up to 70% when it comes to infrastructure cost. Like I said earlier, Windows Virtual Desktop uses Windows 10 multi-session environment, which means that each user doesn't need a dedicated virtual machine. You can have multiple users on one server, and each user can use resources from that particular server, right? Now, this saves a lot of cost, both in terms of hardware and also in terms of licensing, right? Now you don't need to license each and every user for his Windows 10 virtual machine, right? All all the users are accessing one single Windows 10 multi-session environment. So you're saving on resources with respect to hardware. Your management is much more easier. The amount of let's say rack space it utilizes is also less. So you see all these various cost benefits when it comes to Windows Virtual Desktop. Also a quick comparison, right? So if you're using, if each of your users are given a 2-core 8 GB machine, now the same machine if converted for 32 users, all you need is an 8-core 32 GB machine, right? So you will see substantial saving, right, from $40 all the way down to $7 per user per month, right? Also, in terms of licenses, as I spoke in the previous slide, if you have implemented an on-prem RDS server or an on-prem infrastructure, you will need to license all your servers for Windows Server license. You'll need remote desktop CALs for all your users. When you implement Windows Virtual Desktop, there is no need to license your Windows 10 or Windows Server at all. Now, Windows Virtual Desktop, one of its value proposition is to use Windows 10 multi-session. But if you do have applications that require you to still implement a Windows Server on Windows Virtual Desktop, you still want users to log into a server infrastructure, it is still possible. And the best part is you don't need to buy license for the server. There is no Microsoft license required. If you implement a Windows 10 multi-session, you still don't need to buy license for that particular server, right? So you save so much more money just in license. Also, if you want to implement file server where your user profiles are being stored, you could potentially use Azure Files or blob storage, which is part of Microsoft Azure, and save the cost of even licensing your file servers as well, right? So there are all these cost benefits, and ABT can work with you, understand your need, understand your infrastructure, understand how your applications are running and hosted, and look at these options and bring down the cost to a much lower level, especially when it comes to licensing. Now, Windows Virtual Desktop, since it is running on the public cloud, you get the benefit of CapEx versus Opex, right? So you can always start small with any service of cloud. Windows Virtual Desktop is no more exception. So you can, if you're a company who is made of 10 employees, you can start with a small server, and as and when you grow, you can increase and decrease your resource consumption on Azure, right? It can be servers, it can be operating system licenses, it can be user CALs. All of these things can be combined within Windows Virtual Desktop, and you can have a more Opex-based operating model rather than planning for the next 5 to 10 years, buying a big fat server now, and you're not even sure whether you'll utilize it to the maximum extent, right? Windows Virtual Desktop also has advanced features within them called auto scaling, where you could potentially scale up and scale down depending on user load on daily basis. Let's say in the next month you get a project, you hire 3 contract employees for 3 months, right? Now you need some high resources for the next 3 months. It can dynamically scale up. After 3 months, you want to scale it down, or even during a week, you want good number of resources or all the resources possible to make sure applications running efficiently on the weekdays. But during the weekends, let's say you have somebody accessing it, let's say a support engineer or some of your employees accessing it during weekends, so you don't actually need the full strength of the service, so you can actually scale it down. So this flexibility is what a public cloud provides, and it is also available with Windows Virtual Desktop. Also, in terms of management, as I already covered this, ABT will look into your existing licenses which you have. If you are a customer who is already using Windows Server Software Assurance or Windows 10, or if you're already on certain Microsoft 365 plans, which I'll be covering in the next slide, they can potentially reuse a lot of licenses, right? And also in terms of management, since it is running in the cloud, you don't need to worry about uptime of these servers. You don't need to worry about load balancing and configuration of load balancing, or even monitoring and diagnostics. All of these things are monitored, managed, and available in Azure, and ABT is certified. They have several certified consultants on Microsoft Azure who can help you with getting the right information whenever required about the performance of your applications. One of the most important pieces with respect to licensing is with Windows Virtual Desktop, you could potentially reuse your Microsoft 365 license. So let's say if you're a customer who is on Microsoft 365 Business Premium E3 or E5, you already have a Windows 10 license with you, which you could potentially reuse with Windows Virtual Desktop. You don't need to buy any Windows 10 license additionally, right? Now, if you're a customer who wants to deploy a Windows Server operating system on Windows Virtual Desktop, then all you need is RDS CAL with software assurance, right? For the user side, you still don't need to license your server, right? So let me repeat, there is no licensing of the server. All your licensing is your users. So if your users are using M365 Business Premium E3 or E5, if you're not on any of these plans, I would strongly encourage you. If you're on Office 365 plan, you can speak with ABT. They will help you move to an M365 plan where you get an additional benefit of reusing that license with Windows Virtual Desktop. Also, if you are a customer who are still using Windows 7, I hope you're not. Windows 7 is almost a 15, 16-year-old operating system. So there's been so many enhancements on the client operating system that Microsoft has done, which you're missing out. But for whatever reason, if you're still using Windows 7 due to application compatibility, I'm sure you're already aware that Microsoft has stopped releasing security updates and patches for Windows 7. Now, there are two ways of how you can get it. You can pay Microsoft extra. The costs are displayed here every year to get security updates and patches for Windows 7, or you can move the Windows 7 platform or the Windows 7 apps or the Windows 7 operating system on Windows Virtual Desktop. And you don't need to pay for the security updates and patches, right? So Windows Virtual Desktop is giving you an option to run Windows 7, Windows 10, and Windows Server. All of these are possible to run on Windows Virtual Desktop. Last but not the least, reduced labor requirement. So since everything is now run on cloud, most of the remote desktop features are now converted to platform as a service. So you don't need to deploy a lot of roles on Azure. All you need to deploy is one single role, and even the storage you can use Azure Blob, Azure Files, which are all platform as a service. The amount of labor cost, or the amount of people that you need to manage and maintain this is also substantially reduced, right? So if we convert the cost of an on-prem labor cost to a cloud, you will see almost close to 60% cost saving. And your IT team, your IT managers can now focus on enabling internal organization or internal employees to come up with new ideas, new innovatives, and work with ABT to expand those onto cloud infrastructure, rather than worrying about uptime of the servers, patching the servers, making sure the servers are able to take care of the load and request that the users are sending. Lastly, I quickly wanted to cover about the ecosystem, the integration options. Now, a lot of companies have old printers, scanners. They are probably already using Citrix for remote desktop, or using VMware Horizon for Windows for remote desktop. Windows Virtual Desktop can integrate with all of these various applications, right? If you are a Citrix customer and let's say you're about to renew your Citrix contract, Citrix is not a very cheap product, right? Yes, it comes with its own benefits, But I would say Windows Virtual Desktop is a very strong competitor for Citrix or even for VMware Horizon. So you can always look at how it compares with respect to cost, features, and functionalities. And if you still want to use Citrix with Azure, it is still very much possible. Citrix can integrate with Windows Virtual Desktop. If you do have printers from HP, Dell, Lenovo, Samsung, Sony, pretty much most of the printers are supported. If you're a customer who uses thin client devices, then you can still use applications such as ThinPrint, iGel, which can help you connect to Windows Virtual Desktop and at the same time connect to your printers and scanners and these devices. It definitely does support out of the box, but if you have a very old legacy printer which you still want to work with Windows Virtual Desktop, it is still very much possible. Lastly, I want to give you some of the very important links and resources. These are technically focused links and resources. So if you want to know how exactly Windows Virtual Desktop monitoring works, how does team works with Windows Virtual Desktop, you can go through these links. But if you do have any questions, if you're interested to know more, if you want to have a more technical session of how things work on Windows Virtual Desktop, please get in touch with ABT and they'll be able to cater to that requirement. So now let's jump on to the demo. Let me quickly show you how Windows Virtual Desktop looks and feels. So let me quickly jump on to the demo and let me share my screen. Just give a second. Okay. So what I'll do is, again, everything is running on Azure. So this is the Azure subscription where I have Windows Virtual Desktop running. It's no different than the subscription that you get. And now to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop, you already have a service available. Now, the good part is since you're associated with ABT, you don't actually need to worry about installing, configuring, managing, and maintaining it. They have very good managed services, pricing and packaging, which you could use. So once, let's say it's deployed and made available to you, how will the end user experience be? So as I said earlier, Windows Virtual Desktop has this very interesting client. It's a client similar to your RDP. So for RDP, you would typically have a client like this. This is the client which you would get. So for Windows Virtual Desktop, this is the client which we'll be using. This is a special client, freely downloadable client. It's available on all the platforms. And once a user logs in, and if you have published apps and desktops, this is how the experience would be, right? Now, if you are published, so for example, for a user called Wade, I have published 3 apps, OneDrive, Teams, and Excel, and also a desktop. And for Willie, I've published only a desktop. Right? And this is how the end user experience will be once they log into the application. So let's go ahead and see how let's say the Teams works, right? So first what I'll do is I'll go into a virtual desktop infrastructure, and this is how the overall experience will be. All he needs to do is just double click on the icon. He'll be asked for a username and password, and this is all your Active Directory username and password, your Azure Active Directory, which is the same username and password which is being used for your Office 365. So I will log in using it, and while it is loading, you will see a section saying, I think I'll have to reshare it. Yes. Yeah. Let me go ahead and reshare screen. Okay. Okay. So this is how the desktop experience would be, right? It's the same Windows 10. Now I've just changed the background so that I know which user is logged in. So I have I'm not sure if you have watched this movie called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which has the Willy Wonka character in it. So it just makes it easier for me to identify which is the desktop. So the Teams opens up, and this is on the desktop. This is on the remote desktop that is happening. So let me log in as Willy here. So this is my domain. So in your scenario, you will be using username at domainname.com, right? Very simple and straightforward. So I'm able to log in into the Teams, which is running within Windows Virtual Desktop, right? And it's a very seamless experience. This is the first time Willie is logging on to Teams, so that's why you see that prompts. But once he is logged in, he can chat with people. He can go ahead, look for people, and start having a conversation. So what I'll do is, Willie is now logged on to a Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So from here, if he clicks on Start, he'll get the same Windows 10 experience. He can go to Explorer. He can create files. He has the entire folder structure available. He can launch Word, Excel. It's a proper Windows 10 operating system. If you even look at the operating system version, it's actually a Windows 10 Enterprise, right? So it's not a cut down version of Windows 10. It is a Windows 10 Enterprise platform that you're getting, right? So this is a virtual desktop experience. And if you have published different apps, if you have installed different apps, all he can do is start launching those apps right from here. Right? So you can have icons available, and as soon as he logs in, Word, Excel, PowerPoint is already configured, Outlook is there, Teams is there, and other applications are also there. So he can just start working with his applications within Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, let me also log in to the Teams client, which is published. So I've published Teams as a remote app as well. So this is Wade. So what I'll do is I'll log in for Wade. I log in as an app. For Willie, I've logged in from a desktop. And then let's see how well these two are able to work. Right now, if you see, if I say show details, it is actually logging in as Wade in the background, right? So it is using, it is loading his user profile from FS Logic. FS Logic is a technology that Microsoft has introduced in Windows Virtual Desktop, which separates the user profile and stores it on a shared location. So what happens is, in terms of performance, you are not storing all your user profile data on a same box or a single location. It is stored separately on a separate location, and that makes it very simple and easy for backing up, for management of those Windows Virtual Desktop profile. And if you see at the bottom here, you see the Teams icon, which has these two braces, right? So this is Wade Smith. So if I click on the icon here, you see this is Wade Smith who is logged in. And from here, I can actually go ahead and look at all these options. I can go ahead and set alerts. I can even look at devices. And it can also go ahead and look at the camera which I'm sharing. It is able to recognize the mic which I have. So all of these things are available for users, right? Now, if from here, if I search for Willie, right? So this is Willy Wonka, and I'm logged in as Wade from a remote app and pinging Willy Wonka, who's using the same Teams but from a virtual desktop. This is ABT test, right? And ideally, it should pop up here as well. There are too many windows open, right? So this is from Wade. So I can even start a call for that matter, right? So I can even click on this, start a call, start a video conference. So the conference that me and you are having today on GoToMeeting, this can potentially be running on Teams, which is running on Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So it's very seamless, very easy. I can access any of the other applications. So from a virtual desktop, I can open PowerPoint, create PowerPoint. I can work on Word, Excel. I can have Chrome installed. So it's a proper Windows 10 experience that you get. And the best part is you can access the desktop from any device. You can use a browser to access it. You can use an Apple iPad. You can use an Android tablet, or you can use a thin client, just a dummy box with just a browser in it, right? So that's how good Windows Virtual Desktop is. Very simple, very easy to set up, and you working with ABT technology will just make your life much more easier, right? So, well, these were the things that I wanted to cover as part of my session. I'll switch back to the slides. And Gerard, if there are any questions from anyone, we can go ahead and take those questions now.
Sure. Thanks, Roshan. Yeah, there's a few questions that have popped throughout that. So one we have here, are WVD users free to install applications as per a local desktop? So yes and no. It depends on the deployment type. So if we deploy this as a dedicated VM per user, then that user can install their own applications just like they would on a normal machine. If we deploy a pooled session host, so we have multiple users on the particular machines, generally in that instance we're also implementing auto scaling, which means there's multiple WVD hosts. So it gets a bit messy if we let the users install software, because they're actually installing it on a machine they may not log into again for some time, because at that login process, the system will put them on whatever VM is available. So in that case, it works very similar to an existing RDS environment, if you're familiar with that, where you would come to us and we would install the software on all of the session hosts so that that user can access it wherever they get logged into.
Yeah, and just adding to that, if you have an application which is used by most of the employees within the organization, what we would potentially do is have it as part of your base image. So as soon as a user launches, even let's say you have a new employee joining in, if he launches either the client or a remote desktop, he already has all those applications installed. It's typically not really recommended for users to just install any apps that they want. We can create exceptions. We can have certain users with those permissions having their own virtual machine. So it depending on, like Gerard said, depending on the situation, depending on the user persona, we can definitely see which is the best option.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got another question here. What happens in the case that you don't have internet access? Does WVD sync with local docs? So there's kind of two answers to this question. If you don't have internet access at your primary office, WVD is hosted in Azure. So it's, as Roshan said, there's a 99.99%, I think, is Microsoft's SLA. So it's always available. You can access it from your phone. You can hotspot your phone to your laptop and you'll be able to get in. But in terms of the syncing with local docs, what we do is we try to utilize as much of the M365 license as possible. So part of that is OneDrive. In most cases, when we're migrating clients to WVD, we're also doing a Teams migration. So that replaces your company shares, your file server in most cases. And we're also migrating your staff docs or your local docs on your PC to OneDrive. You will have OneDrive installed, as you would have seen in that demo, in WVD. Your My Documents and desktops are redirected to it, and it's the same on your local device, your laptops or your desktops with OneDrive installed. So you still have that offline ability if you don't have any internet access. Maybe there's the 4 or 5G towers are down, and there's no internet at your office. You've got no choices. Well, you'll have a local copy of those files still on your desktop that you can work on. When you come online, they'll sync, and that will sync back to WVD, and it'll all be updated relatively quickly. Another one here, typically viewing and working with large PDFs such as CAD drawings using any application on RDS or a terminal server is slow and glitchy. Is this any different with WVD? Yes, it is. So there's multiple options here as well. So as you would have seen from the demo, Microsoft are using a new remote desktop application, just called Remote Desktop, and this replaces the old RDP app that you would all use currently to access RDS or terminal server environments. So there's some improvements with graphics and performance there, and you would see that with the Teams integration. So they've made some big improvements to enable that more seamless video, graphics presentation. Also, depending on the type of file, so if we're talking about CAD data, they can be quite detailed, and there is a lot of processing in the back end, even for just viewing CAD files. So they're based on Azure. Any WVD instance available in your, any server instance available in your Azure region is available to work with WVD. So we can, there's some specific high performance and graphics processing VMs that we can base your WVD images on. So if you have, CAD workers, there are specific CAD machines that we can provision. We can do that as a dedicated VM, so your CAD workers can actually work and do their CAD work in Azure. So it's a lot easier than, or a lot more cost effective than purchasing big CAD machines to do that work. We can create them in Azure. They can work on them. They can turn them off when they're done, or scale them out as you hire more CAD staff, or scale them down as the workload decreases. So there are definitely some improvements there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just adding to what Gerard said, within Windows Virtual Desktop, when you are creating these machines, you can actually choose machines with GPU enabled in them, right? So especially for, let's say, Rivet, CAD, AutoCAD, Autodesk, and then we have a lot of customers in this industry who design these machine parts or building designs and things like this, who need to zoom in, zoom out, and look at look at these designs, add annotations to it. So Windows Virtual Desktop is very much customizable to your requirement, right? So you can create a GPU enabled machine only for, let's say, your architects, and for rest of the users, you can have simple virtual machines, right? Windows virtual machines. And let's say typically your architects would probably work from 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, or 7 in the morning to 8 in the evening. So you can always make sure that they get the best in class performance. Now, these virtual machines range from 6 core, 100 GB RAM. So these are very powerful machines, and you can run them just for 10, 12 hours a day and still keep your cost very, very low. Even if you compare buying a GPU enabled laptop with Windows Virtual Desktop, you'll easily see that difference in terms of cost.
Yeah, exactly. So we have another question here. Can WVD replace my server? Yes, it can. So as I said before, typically when we do a WVD deployment, a lot of the times we're trying to go, or the client's trying to go serverless. They're trying to move all their workloads to the cloud. They're trying to get rid of that old out of warranty server on premise that they don't want to replace for all the benefits of going cloud. They've got more distributed workers, they want more security, they want more flexibility. So yeah, in that instance, most of our WVD deployments, like I said, include a Teams deployment for the collaboration piece, as well as the file share replacement. OneDrive for all your local storage, Exchange Online for your emails, and obviously the WVD for the remote workers and day-to-day work. And for the users that don't go full WVD, maybe we do a remote app just for your line of business application, and all the other work, because you use a lot of cloud-based software and packages, are all just available on the internet. Well, we also include remote device management through Endpoint Manager and Intune. MyObXO does it. Sorry, another question here. Okay, so MyObXO, does it work? I've heard that there can be serious delays when pulling SQL data. Is that right or not? So yes, MyObXO does work. We have a lot of clients that do use Exanet. It works with WVD. It works in a very similar way to existing infrastructure in terms of Exanet. So Exanet is a client server based application. SQL, it's SQL backend. So how we deploy Exanet in WVD is we'll have a dedicated SQL server in the Azure environment as well. So there's other infrastructure behind the scenes to make WVD work. Obviously, Microsoft, as Roshan explained, handles the connection aspect, your RD gateways, your connection brokers, all of that. But then there's also some other requirements that we need to do. We need a domain controller to run it, and if you're running any applications or SQL databases like Exanet, then we need a server to do that as well. So we'll put, and in Azure, all of those servers talk to each other. So there is some virtual networking that happens. So they talk directly, just like they would if they were on a piece of hardware in your office. So yeah, essentially to answer your question, we haven't seen any performance issues or impacts. We've seen better performance. We've seen improved performance putting Exanet in the cloud with WVD. Okay, so what happens with accounting software on term server? Do we need a cloud-based product? No, you don't. So WVD, as I said, it's essentially replacing that terminal server. So any other packages that you want installed that are supported with Windows 10, we can install. So that includes Mild, that includes Exanet, that includes all your Office suite, any time clock software, any software that you use that would currently be installed on a terminal server, RDS server, or even just your Windows 10 devices around the office, we can install on WVD. So you've really got the two options there. You can use this as a full-blown remote desktop, just like you would an RDS server, or you can use it as a remote app server, just hosting that one single legacy application that you can't move to the cloud because there's no suitable alternative. And yeah, I've had another question here, TE-CRM. So yes, TE-CRM, Legrand, all of those CRM packages are all fully supported in WVD. At the end of the day, they just see it as a Windows 10 machine. Does it integrate with NetSuite for emails, etc.? So I believe there's two different ways you can email out of NetSuite. You can either email directly out of NetSuite using an SMTP connector or a smart host. That doesn't matter what endpoint you're using to connect to it, that'll work. But the other option, I believe, is using Outlook integration. And yes, it does. And that's the same with Exanet as well. So you would have Outlook configured and installed on your WVD machines, and the NetSuite connectors installed as well, which allows you to open up, you'd hit the email invoice or sales order out of NetSuite, which will then open Outlook. It'll launch Outlook on that WVD host as well. I think that was most of the questions there.
Did you answer the one about the Adobe Creative Cloud? So the question is, can Adobe Creative Cloud software be installed on WVD?
Sorry, I missed that one. Thanks, Ryan. Yes, it can. So like I said, any software that supports Windows 10 is supported in WVD. So like we were explaining before with your CAD software, Adobe Creative Cloud, depending on what you're doing in it, can be quite graphics intensive, and we may need to look at deploying a more graphics intensive, a GPU based instance to support that and actually be able to render those images or videos or whatever you're doing in Creative Cloud. And as Roshan explained before, if it is just one or two people in the organization doing that and the rest of the users are really like admin or lighter workloads, you don't want to be deploying those more expensive, heavy, high performance machines for everyone. You can have separate pools. So you might have your design team or marketing may have their own pool of WVD machines that have higher graphics processing power, GPU backed, whereas your rest of your staff, your sales staff and your admin staff might just have a lower spec machine, or maybe even just a remote app to launch Exanet or TE-CRM. And another question here, can we get a trial? Yes, definitely. So we've got two options available for trials. We have a demo tenant that we have set up in our own environment that we can give you access to. Obviously, you're going to be limited there with what you can do. If you've got Exanet, you want to give us a test database or something, we can throw that on there. We can give you access to it. You can see what that experience is like for yourself and make up your own minds there. If you have more like a range of different software packages, or maybe lots of customization, and that's what you're not sure, like customization in Exonet, you're not sure if that's going to work for you. We also offer POCs. So what we'll do is we'll actually configure this environment in your own subscription, in your own Azure tenant. We'll run it up. We'll work with your partners to install the software and configure it in a state where you can actually test it and see if it works. If it doesn't work for you, then we just delete it. We just forget about it. We close it down, and we talk about some other options. If it does work for you, well, then we move to the next stage, which is configuring it for the high capacity based on the number of users that you're going to have using the application and the suite. And then we work on that migration process, whether there's the file migrations, the live databases, and whatever else needs to be done. What about applications that communicate with local devices, such as time clocks using Telnet, etc.? So yeah, it depends on how they communicate. So local printers, for example, whether USB or something like that, we've got two options. There's three options actually. Sorry, we can use printer redirection. Any device that can be redirected, so USB, printers, cameras, audio devices, local drives on your machine, whether they're USB drives or inbuilt drives, can all be redirected through the remote desktop application. For printers specifically, we use a product called Printex, which essentially is a cloud-based print server. So it just uses little agents on your machines to make those devices available in the cloud, another agent on the WVD machines to print just like you would if you were in the office right next to it. And the third option, which will also pretty much cover the rest of those devices there, like time clocks and anything else, any PLC controllers or anything like that, is a VPN. So we will use a VPN tunnel between Azure and your primary office, or however many offices you have, to pretty much make Azure an extension of your network. So you can see that as a local device. You can connect to it with a local IP address through a secure encrypted tunnel without having to open any ports or anything like that, and without compromising the integrity and the security of WVD. Okay, that's all the questions that have popped in so far.
Yeah, so just to add to what Zero was saying, and just to summarize some of the questions, if you can install an application on Windows 10 or Windows Server, you can install it on Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So think of it in that way. If you're talking about MyOb or NetSuite or any CRM, Oracle, SAP, any custom applications like Autodesk, Revit, if you can install and work with these applications on Windows 10 or a Windows Server operating system, it'll work on Windows Virtual Desktop, because we are using the same operating system. It's nothing different, right? It's the same binaries, it's the same operating system. Second point, which I want to quickly touch, is how can you make sure your office devices, printers, scanners, any third-party application work with Windows Virtual Desktop? As Ryan mentioned, for printers and scanners, you can use Printex, or you can always set up a site-to-site VPN. Just make sure both the networks are able to speak with each other, and it'll work as if they're part of the same network, right? They'll be able to ping each other, communicate, and get the work done. So very simple and easy to manage and configure.
Perfect. Okay. There's two real quick questions here that I'll just squeeze in before we wrap up. Someone here has said that they use ABM and Legrand synchronized. What difference is WVD to moving these apps to the cloud? And that just comes down to the control. You have more flexibility and control over any other customization or any other third-party integrations, whether that's Outlook or anything else that you want to do down the track. We can integrate. And does VPN work with Barracuda Firewall SD-WAN? Absolutely, it does. As you're probably aware, we're a Barracuda partner, and that was one of the defining factors when choosing Barracuda as a partner, was that compatibility with Azure and their integration with Microsoft and Azure as well. Okay.
Great.
Right.
I think we'll be wrapping it up there. Thank you all for your time and for joining us today. Obviously, any questions, any follow-up, don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we will be reaching out to all of you as well, just to follow on the conversation and get any feedback. Obviously, this is a new thing for us as well, so we were quite keen to do this. I think we have one more poll question as well, just to sort of finish up, and so we'll quickly throw that one up on the screen. So it is, how would WVD be a benefit to your organization? So we've got, it would make the staff of onboarding process a lot easier. It would create more standardization within our business. With a lot of remote staff, the more in the cloud, the better, and a unified Microsoft ecosystem to drive efficiencies. So just give you a few seconds to answer that. There we go. So remote staff being the key issue there, and then sort of standardization and a unified ecosystem sort of coming up, rounding that up, which is exactly the benefit of this sort of environment. So that's great. So we will be getting in touch with all of you as well, just to follow up over the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, though, don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much for all joining. Thank you, ABT, for giving us the opportunity to deliver this. So yeah, looking forward to delivering more sessions and working with you.
Great. Thank you, Roshan. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.